Welcome to the Nuggets Inc. podcast, presented by no one. I'm your host, Matt Schubert, joined via phone by our man Bennett Durando on a historic, catastrophic, explosive, sad, depressing day in Nuggets history. Michael Malone, Calvin Booth, fired. We had to talk about it. Maybe the craziest day in franchise history. One of them, there's 3 games left to go, and the 2 lead dogs just got fired. And that's what we're talking about. Coming up next. And we are back for an emergency edition of the Nuggets Inc. podcast presented by nobody. Bennett Durando, currently on the way to the airport to get to Sacramento for what will be a pretty crazy scene, I'm going to imagine, in the visiting locker room with a whole lot of other people that probably wouldn't have been there about 24 hours ago because bombshell, Michael Malone fired. Calvin Booth fired. And we still got 3 games left in the regular season. What the heck is going on, Bennett Durando?
I'm still trying to figure it out while I sit on Pena in traffic right now. It's going to be an interesting scenario in Sacramento. It's kind of funny. The Nuggets and Kings are the second half of an ESPN doubleheader following Luka Doncic's return to Dallas in a Lakers-Mavericks game, and that was supposed to be the big headliner of the day, and it still is, but now ESPN is lucked into this fascinating, dramatic situation with Denver.
That they're playing the Kings. Can you believe they're playing the Kings, the other team to fire Michael Malone? There is a little bit of something to that.
I guess it's poetic if you want to call it that.
It's sad.
Shocking stuff.
It's all sad.
3 games left in Malone's 10th season with the Nuggets. He was the 4th longest tenured coach in the league, the winningest coach in Nuggets history with 471 regular season wins, another 44 in the playoffs. Obviously, the 2023 NBA championship.
Most playoff wins, almost by double, by the way. 44 playoff wins. I think The next one was 23.
Yeah. So I had started to just get the vibe that we might be headed toward this in the offseason. I did not expect for this news to happen today, if it was going to happen at all. I think that everyone in the organization was pretty shocked, even if there were some dynamics and some politics that maybe kind of made this seem predictable. People in the front office, people on the coaching staff, players were surprised by this news. And they are tasked with picking up the pieces of this 4-game losing streak now with 3 games left in the season. I'm pretty sure I saw that this is the latest into a regular season that a coach has been fired since 1980.
Since 1980, I'm sorry, you broke up there.
It's just absolutely stunning. And lead assistant David Adelman is the interim head coach suddenly, and he's going to have to try and right the ship as much as he can with the Nuggets in danger of literally missing the playoffs.
Right. So I got to interrupt you. So it just seems the first question, and it's probably everybody's first question, is why now? Why do it now? Your season is still going on. It seems like there would have been a chance for them to suddenly turn things around, maybe win their last 3 games, get a 4 or 5 seed, and maybe go on a run. Why imperil that right now when you could have easily done this in May, you could have done this in June? Is it that ownership didn't want to give Malone a chance to win his job back? What do you think is the reasoning behind this?
I think it was a sense of urgency about what the ownership group still believes is a roster that can win this season. This was Josh Kroenke's decision.
But how do you help it by getting rid of your head coach of 10 years? I mean, you're throwing chaos into the locker room 3 games before the playoffs start. That, in what world is that going to help things?
So key players with the Nuggets had kind of lost confidence in the messaging that Malone was giving. And I think that you could kind of see it on the court in terms of the defensive output and the defensive effort that the Nuggets were giving on a near nightly basis. Multiple times throughout the season, Malone has kind of had these outbursts calling out the team for its defensive effort, defending on a string as a unit, the fly-around mentality that Denver's scheme really relies on. Those things have been pretty much completely absent. You can point to the loss of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as a point of attack defender and a screen navigator if you want, and direct that back toward the roster building and toward Calvin Booth, or you can direct it toward a player effort buy-in sort of perspective on this, which there's no doubt that I think there was a little bit of a lack of faith from some of the players in the scheme and a great degree of frustration in what Denver was doing defensively. And so by making this decision, basically the message that it sends is this team is spiraling toward an early exit, if a playoff appearance at all. And if that's going to happen anyway, and that is the calculation that the Kroenkes have made, then might as well try to shake things up and cross your fingers that they can kind of get a jolt here and come out rejuvenated. There has been a lot of anxiety in the building at Ball Arena, just in terms of the dynamics with their defense, the Malone versus Calvin Booth sort of political intrigue. And I think the idea is maybe there's a little bit of relief now, and this team can go out there and play a little bit looser, find a way to win some games. And it's clearly like they clearly think the roster is still good enough to do something this season, and they felt like they needed to make the change that drastically.
Yeah, okay, fine. But like they can't just redo their scheme overnight. Like what, you got one practice and you just completely revamp your scheme? Like, is Adelman really going to change things that much over the course of 24 hours?
Right. And Adelman is an offensive coach. He is their offensive coordinator. He has been for several years. And Saunders is
the defense, right?
Yes, Saunders is the defense.
And
Brian Saunders.
So he's still around. The guy in charge of the defense is still around.
Yes. Look, this is a move that is made based on what will get the players to play harder. That is absolutely a factor. Josh Kroenke basically said as much today in a, team released interview.
State-run media interview.
Indeed, yes. The only comments that Josh Kroenke gave today was that basically they wanted to shake everything they could get out of this tree. That is a paraphrase, but he said something to that extent.
Well, they went They went full Tumor's Corner on this tree, is what happened.
Thanks for the Auburn reference for me. That that makes me feel great. It's a drastic move. It's a objectively stunning move. Like, this has been one of the winningest teams in the NBA this decade so far in the 2020s. They have been a high floor team, I would say. And the Kroenkes felt like they were kind of hitting that floor. I think that Josh Kroenke kind of reached a point where he had had enough of playing middleman between his own employees to a certain extent with Malone and Calvin Booth. And on top of that, the Kroenkes were at Ball Arena. They were out and about quite a bit recently. It almost seemed like they were kind of getting the lay of the land and scoping things out, trying to get a sense for what the vibe in the locker room was. And this was the conclusion they ended up making, to fire Michael Malone, who, make no mistake, is going to be remembered and should be remembered as the greatest coach in Nuggets history at this point.
Yeah, the numbers all say it. So was Stan involved in this at all? Or was this?
Yes. My understanding is that first and foremost, this was Josh Kroenke's decision, but he and his father obviously go over these things extensively together. These decisions would not have been made without, extensive discussions with Stan Kroenke. So those two made the decision that they wanted to move on at the end of the season in recent days. And then just so happens the Nuggets are in the middle of this 4-game losing streak. They look like they are playing with no joy. They look somewhat dead in the water, especially in the fallout of that Minnesota game. And it accelerated the process. Here we are.
Okay, so when Enos is standing by the bench during a game in March, were they already trying to survey whether or not they were going to fire Michael Malone, or is this something that arose well after that?
I think they were taking a good long look at it, at least. Not necessarily making that decision, but there was kind of this question hanging over the season that if things went awry, would they have to choose between Michael Malone and Calvin Booth? And if so, which one would they choose to keep? Which one?
And they chose neither. They chose neither.
And they end up choosing neither. And that is, probably a byproduct of the relationship that those two had, or the lack thereof.
How did it get that bad? How did it get to the point where they weren't able to work together and they ended up sort of, they kind of shivved each other?
Yeah, it's a good question, because the issues that they had and the disagreements that they had are not foreign to coaches and general managers. Like, it was a lot of who is playing, is the coach following through with the philosophical plan outlined by the general manager? Why is he playing the veterans instead of the younger guys? Like, there are almost these tropes in terms of coach GM dynamics, and Calvin Booth wanted to kind of think outside the box, take more risks. Malone did not think that was effective as far as a win now strategy. And I think it was just kind of a slow build of these little situations, and Calvin Booth not making a move that Malone might have wanted him to make, or Michael Malone making lineup decisions that didn't correspond with what Calvin Booth wanted for the direction of the team. And it happened fast. Like, it's funny. I had heard that that things weren't necessarily outwardly bad between the two of them, but they just haven't communicated that much. It's just been kind of a tense, anxious relationship, and it has had this trickle down effect through the front office, through the coaching staff, into the locker room, where people feel like they needed to pick sides. They felt kind of pitted against each other, and that's where you get to the point where the organizational alignment is totally off, and at that point, a change is just necessary, and that's what Josh Kroenke decided.
Okay, so let's say 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, the Nuggets get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. Season's over.
Yep.
They now can trade anybody on their roster. They don't have a ton of different moves that they can make to really reshape the roster outside of that. They don't have cap space. They don't have a first-round pick, and I don't think they have a second-round pick either. They do get next year's first-round pick healthy again and able to contribute, able to play after the GM who drafted him was fired. What happens? Is everything on the table? What do you think? Like, could they trade Jamal Murray? Could they trade MPJ? Could they trade Aaron Gordon? Is that what we're looking at now?
Absolutely. I think that their only path out of this luxury tax predicament that they are in is to make a trade of one of those three core pieces on large salaries.
But they're going to have to. But they have to do that while improving the team, right?
Yes. No. I mean, they have to. They have to do that in order to improve the team.
Yeah.
Like that, they're in a tough spot on draft capital. They don't have a pick this year. They are free agency wise. They are kind of stuck in this cycle of maybe a mid-level exception guy and veteran minimum contracts, which, you know, that's the situation Calvin Booth was in. And
Trick
so,
or treat. You don't know what you're getting.
Exactly. You can't even entirely blame an executive when one of those kinds of signings miss, because that's just the situation they're in. But you know, they put themselves in that situation with the contract.
You can't blame them, but you're also signing a guy who gets to play with Nikola Jokic. And one thing we know for sure is anybody who gets to play with Nikola Jokic, usually he gets the best out of them. So in that sense, signing somebody who can work with Nikola Jokic shouldn't be that big of a challenge, or shouldn't be a huge challenge in the same way that it's a crapshoot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Certainly worked with Russell. True. It worked with Russell Westbrook to a certain degree, maybe not in crunch time. Yep. And, you know, part of this thing about this firing that just boggles my mind, let's just go back a week. Let's say Russell Westbrook makes that layup and nobody gets fouled at the end of that game against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Are we talking about this now? I don't think we are.
I think that's a fair question. It's kind of impossible to know, but like there's a decent chance that, you know, even if they still lose the Spurs game and play it out like they did, like, I don't know, maybe things go different against Golden State. Maybe they still lose that, but it doesn't seem quite as bad. The vibes were not very good, I would say, coming into the Pacers game, and it just felt like they were going to lose that one when it was close, which is a feeling I don't usually have when I'm watching the second half of a close game at Ball Arena with the Nuggets. Like, you're just kind of used to seeing them find a way to win those situations. So, yeah, it's a totally fair.
Well, and Jamal Murray wasn't healthy for any of those games. So they weren't even whole for those games.
Yeah. Look, there are things that, independent of health, have been consistent issues, and the defense is one of those things. As I alluded to, they've dropped from 8th in the league to 20th. It's a significant drop. Their bench production has been near the bottom of the league for a few years now. And, you know, obviously the injuries kind of exacerbate that because it just moves guys one extra spot up on the depth chart. But there were consistent things at play here. But, yeah, the Jamal Murray injury was a huge part of this 4-game losing streak that they're on. The Russell Westbrook layup did make a massive difference. So it's kind of a fascinating, you know, little what-if situation, I guess.
And so the thing, I think one of the more shocking elements of this is that Michael Malone, with the fan base, very popular head coach. There was a faction certainly that was calling for him to get fired, but it was a small faction. It wasn't I think by and large he had been embraced by the fans. They loved him. He was great at the victory parade. He always stood up for his players and supported them on the court as well. To see it end like this, and Troy Renck had a column that basically said Michael Malone deserved better. And I have to say, I agree with him. I think you let a guy that's been with your organization for 10 years finish out the season. Like, why not just let him do that? Give him a chance. He's already given you the best tenure of a head coach in the history of that organization. Didn't he earn that?
It's a fair argument. I think you're right that in general, Malone endeared himself to the fans in Denver extremely well. He is a master with the microphone, one of the best coaches in the league at doing the whole media game that you have to do every day. He's witty. He is got a huge personality. He calls out the team when he feels that it's necessary. I will say, I think that there's been more frustration, at least from my perspective, from what I've seen from fans this year, particularly in regard to Russell Westbrook's minutes in the second half of the season, as he has struggled, because he had his assist to turnover ratio in the first half of the season through 41 games was 2.3, I think, and it is now down below 1.5 in the second half of the season. So it's been a huge difference. His minutes have been slightly up, I believe, by about 2 minutes a game in the second half of the season. And I think fans have grown a little impatient with that element of it, with Malone closing with Westbrook. And look, I think the players in that Nuggets locker room really like Russell Westbrook and really value his leadership and support him as a player and want to win for him. But he commits a lot of live ball turnovers, and that's going to frustrate anyone, right?
Yeah.
So those start to pile up. He remains on the court at the end of games. It seems like he's a risk to commit a live ball turnover every time he has the ball, and also a spacing casualty whenever he doesn't have the ball. And like that starts to have an effect on guys in the locker room in terms of, okay, where's the accountability here from the coach?
Certainly that's been a bugaboo of Michael Malone's tenure pretty much for the entire time, is that he will always lean towards the vets at the expense of the younger players on the roster. And obviously that was one of the big problems that he and Calvin Booth had with each other. Somehow Tim Conley was able to navigate that with him without it being too much of a problem. But that was the problem here. I guess it just seems to me they basically just killed their season. Like a season that didn't need to be killed. It wasn't dead yet. It wasn't even almost dead. We're not, this isn't we've got to put a pill in them and, do the whole thing like in Princess Bride. Some people don't know that movie. Aaron and I are old enough to remember that movie.
I am as well.
Good. There was still hope in this season. Now, Jamal Murray's health looms over all of this, and maybe they know something we don't. Maybe they know that Jamal Murray ain't coming back. Who knows? But I don't know. I guess to me, and I know I've said this already, why do it now? Why make this change now? It didn't work out immediately for Memphis, although they've rebounded a bit since then. And you look at the schedule at Sacramento tomorrow. That's not an easy game for a new coach. And then Memphis at home. That's a huge game on Friday. Huge game. They lose that one, and oh boy, it gets bad. And then at Houston, who knows? I'm bet Houston's probably sitting their guys, so probably a winnable game. But all that said, all this chaos, everything put in flux, man, it just seems like they kneecapped their season, and I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair side to take. They're kind of two completely opposite ways to look at it, which is that this could, like, what's the better circumstance to play under a state of anxiety, but pressure that maybe could work out in a positive way still, or to play with nothing to lose, sort of, because it feels like they're saying we've got nothing to lose by making that move, at least in the short term.
Now they do, because the expectations are rock bottom. Like I can't think of a healthy postseason for the Nuggets that they've gone into where I've thought my expectations have been lower than this. They were already pretty bad given the way they were closing out the season, but now when you throw this chaos into it, and it just, man, it's hard to see that if they got to the second round, hire Adelman the next day, because This is crazy.
It's interesting. I think Adelman is a really good coach, and obviously, like him designing the offense, like he has been overseeing the thing that the Nuggets are best at for the last few years. The players do really like him. It's also going to be an interesting dynamic here because he's kind of a different personality from Malone. He's much more low key, kind of, he's not going to have these explosive outbursts necessarily in the rage timeouts that Malone has. Maybe he's got that in him as a head coach, who knows? But the team could take on a different personality here. So I'm curious to kind of see how that plays out the rest of the season. And there certainly could be an audition element to it. I hope that you don't lose me here. I'm going into an airport elevator, which means I probably don't have a ton of time left to talk anyway.
Well, we can go to break and try and get you back on once you hit security. But before we go on break real quick, the other part of this obviously is Calvin Booth's gone, and now they don't have a top executive unless that person is in the building. One thing we know about the Kroenkes is they don't like to pay top dollar for their executives, which makes you think, well, what are they going to do now? How's that going to work? Is it going to be outside the building or is it going to be inside the building? Because it seems like inside the building is the most likely scenario because that's what they always do.
It's a great question. As I reported earlier, they offered Calvin Booth a contract extension. They were prepared to extend him to the extent that they are willing to pay executives. And Calvin Booth essentially ended up turning that down.
Oops.
Saw it as a lowball offer, and the extension offer got taken off the table pretty much after that. So it's fascinating. Tommy Alchetis is the assistant GM. He still has his job. Maybe he is the affordable option that the Kroenkes can turn to now, or you can go big game hunting. You can try to get someone like Bob Myers, who's sitting out there and has always kind of been rumored to be someone who could end up in another front office job.
That just feels like that you're going to have to pay a lot of money to get Bob Myers interested in coming to Denver.
I agree.
And
I agree. Or Tim Connolly, for that matter.
Yeah,
and from Minnesota,
and who's apparently is down to the final year of his contract. I just feel like, I don't know, if they were going to pay somebody, they would have done that with Tim Connolly 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was. I can't even remember now. And they didn't. They let him walk, and they gave the job to the guy in-house, Cal. So it's just, how do you totally redo the team with somebody who's been around the whole time?
It's a good question. It's going to be a fascinating barometer for how much. Oh, it's going to be, excuse me, sorry, you guys are getting the airport direction treatment right now. But what they do with this opening is going to be a fascinating barometer for how drastically they really want this to change. If they see Tommy Balchetis as a, radically different perspective as Calvin Booth, or if they see him as the bargain who they have raised up in their organization for a decade. It's kind of going to be fascinating. Just what is the dynamics there? Because, if Calvin Booth ultimately wanted more money and they were willing to extend him, is there a world where they had just chosen Calvin Booth and he would still be here and Michael Malone would not? And if that's the case, were they actually content with the in-house philosophy on some of this stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. And also just you got to feel terrible for Cal. He's got to be kicking himself not taking that extension now. That is tough. And somewhat related, we hope for the best for Mike Singer in that front office. Our old friend Mike Singer, who's the head of intelligence.
Our dear friend.
Yeah.
Intelligence and strategy. That's the title.
Yeah.
It bears mentioning everyone else in the coaching staff, everyone else in the front office still has a job.
Well, you can't fire them all right now, right?
Least.
You can't fire them all.
So,
there's still a season to play.
Yeah. The fact that only 2 people were fired today, I think, is a decision that speaks to the fact that this was about those 2 people and the dynamic between them rather than the entire front office ideology or the entire coaching staff ideology.
Unbelievable. Both of them probably thought one of them was going to walk away from it and one of them wasn't. And it turns out neither. Just a good reminder that it's always good to have good relationships with the people that you work with.
Fair point. I got to run through this security.
All right. So we're going to go on break while Bennett goes through security. Hopefully we get him back on the other side while he waits to board his flight for Sacramento.
My name is Mike Singer, former Nuggets beat writer, and I wrote a book. It's called Why So Serious? The Untold Story of Nikola Jokic. I get into his early years. I talk to teammates, coaches, family members, and I think that I kind of changed the way that people may understand Nikola. And so if you're interested, it is available at HarperCollins.com, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Why So Serious? The Untold Story of NBA champion Nikola Jokic.
And we are back. Bennett is, I believe, now through security at DIA. Have you ridden on the train yet to your terminal?
Yeah, I didn't want to belabor our listeners with train background noise, so I'm on the way to the gate. Boarding started about 5 minutes ago, but that's all right.
You can talk through boarding. They don't tell you to turn off your phone for a while, so you're good. This is the red eye to Oakland?
No. Vegas first.
Vegas first. Stop layover in Vegas.
And then on to the Bay.
Okay, well, when you get to Vegas, one thing I'll tell you, don't put money on the Nuggets. I don't think that's going to work out for you.
Or, alternatively, maybe this is the best time to put money on the Nuggets.
Yeah.
Isn't this? Yeah, that's topical right now. Aren't you supposed to buy low?
Can somebody win the MVP award just a couple weeks after their coach got fired?
I doubt it. I don't think he was going to win, regardless of who the coach was. But this certainly kind of sticks the nail in the coffin. I think it was sort of used against Giannis last year that they had so much strife with their coaching situation. So it's hard to blame anyone for using this against Jokic a little bit. On the other hand, he might finish the season at a 30-point triple-double for his averages. So he's pretty close.
Incredible. So little historical data for you here. The last time a coach got fired close to this late in the season was our man Larry Brown, who, by the way, is getting inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame in Colorado tomorrow.
How about that?
1982-83 Nets. 6 games to go. They were a 4 seed.
Wow. It's pretty amazing that you had this and the Taylor Jenkins firing in Memphis in the same season in a matter of weeks when both of these teams were in playoff positions in such a competitive West. Like, pretty unprecedented sequence of events. And they're not even close to the most shocking moves that a team has made this season.
No, it's somehow not. It's been, I guess, pretty much starting with the Luka Doncic trade, just nothing but insanity in the NBA for the last few months. And I can't think of any other time in the history of the league where we've had this much turmoil and craziness going on. Absolutely.
The turmoil, the transactions, it is crazy. I was just thinking about this while I was on the train, but after a couple of coach firings this season, Jenkins one of them, and Mike Brown in Sacramento being the other, we've seen Michael Malone kind of react in shock to both of these decisions. And while I absolutely think those were earnest reactions, I also think that it's possible that he had his situation on the mind a little bit and was laying the groundwork of how ridiculous it seems to fire a good coach in the middle of the season. Obviously, his reaction with the Sacramento one was personal, with ownership there on top of everything else. But you know, he reacted in shock to the Jenkins one as well.
So you're going to see the team tomorrow in Sacramento. What do you think you're going to come across? What are you expecting in that?
I kind of feel like it's going to be one of two extremes. Like they're either going to seem completely, you know, despondent and it's going to feel like they interpreted the moves that the Kroenkes made as moves that give up on the season, like you said, or they're going to come out with a fire under their butts and sort of a, you know, that typical new coach boost that we kind of see occasionally when one of these happens in the middle of a season. I honestly think either of those is possible.
The dead cat bounce is also what it's known as.
There you go. I don't know. It just feels like there's not a ton of room for the middle outcome right there. That's just like my hunch. I don't know.
So the way it stands right now, it's Tuesday night. Games are still going on. But there had been, was it, I believe, 6 teams that had 32 losses entering the night?
That is correct.
And
5 teams.
5 teams. 5 teams with 32 losses. And the Nuggets could fall anywhere from the 3 seed to out of the playoffs entirely, which is just absolutely crazy to think of. With less than a week to go in the regular season, that the Nuggets are still not guaranteed a spot in the playoffs. So with all those outcomes out there, am I crazy for thinking it's might be kind of good if they land in the 6th seed?
I kind of think so. I think you're not crazy. They are like that. That feels like the worst case scenario would be 6. Like, let's say they're in the 4-5 against the Timberwolves, right? And it's the matchup that they've been dreading, and has gone as poorly as it could possibly go for them this season, dating back to the playoffs last year. And they have to fight through a Minnesota team, and maybe they find a way to win. Who knows? But then, second round, you're now facing and dealing with that OKC juggernaut earlier than you thought you would be by being on that side of the bracket. And then, if you somehow find a way through that, you might be looking at the Lakers in the 3rd round. Like,
it's a gauntlet. That's a total gauntlet.
Like fighting their way back to the 4 or the 5 right now, only to face a pathway that could feasibly go Minnesota, OKC, Lakers is, you know, kind of, there's a cruel irony to that if they find a way into that situation the rest of this week. So, you know, it's crazy. There's an outcome here with a 5-way tiebreaker that is in play. The Nuggets would be 4th of those 5 teams, which would mean 7th and hosting Memphis in the play-in game.
That's because of conference record, right? That's the Western Conference.
It's like, well, it's like a combined head-to-head record, is my understanding.
Okay.
I was going to go through some more of those tiebreakers in the 2-way and the 3-way situations today, and then I was a little busy, so didn't have a chance to do that.
Then some news happened.
Yeah. So it's funny. I haven't even had a chance really to pay attention to the games that have been going on tonight. But I did briefly see that Minnesota blew a 24-point lead in the last 10 minutes against Milwaukee.
Ooh.
So
that's a development.
A notable result. I'm pretty sure Milwaukee won by 7. I think the Bucks outscored them by 31
I'm going through the
minutes.
Going through the scores right now. So the Warriors are destroying the Suns as we speak. They're gonna win. The Clippers are beating the Spurs. They're up by 9. I can't imagine they're going to lose that game. The Grizzlies clobbered the Hornets. And yes, the Bucks beat the Timberwolves. Lakers, I believe, lost to the Thunder. They were sitting a few guys. It seemed like they were more punting on this one for the Dallas game.
Yeah.
So with all that said,
so what that means, and it's kind of funny to do this because, people might listen to this on Thursday or whatever.
Right.
And this won't be as timely anymore, but the Nuggets will tip off tomorrow in a 4-way tie. There will be 4 teams sitting at 47 and 32, and then the Timberwolves will be in 8th place because of their loss tonight. If I'm correct.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure
you are correct. Yeah. I'm looking at the standings. That's what it's looking like to me.
It is crazy. I can't remember seeing anything like this. The variance of things that can happen in the 5-day stretch right now.
Right. Absolutely insane. The Lakers winning and beating OKC on Sunday really sort of solidified their case for getting one of those top 4 seeds.
Yeah, probably. Hey, a question for you here. To the point that I brought up about maybe there's a little bit of an audition dynamic for David Adelman right now. Is this a fair way to assess him, this situation?
No, not at all. They've just threw a stink bomb into the locker room, and now he's got to somehow turn that into a good situation. If he does, like I suppose it is, in the sense that it shows, wow, look what he did with this terrible thing that we threw him into. But if he doesn't, that doesn't prove he's a bad coach. It was already a situation that was bad, and they just made it demonstrably worse.
I think you're right. It's a little bit of a landmine for him. So,
yeah, I'm curious to see what happens if it's a total overhaul of the front office, if it's a total overhaul of the coaching staff. I think one of the things that was an advantage for the Nuggets for a while now was the continuity that they had, and they just punted on that advantage. That advantage is now going away, partly because you got to imagine there's some other things that are going to happen this offseason. Somebody's going to get traded. Something's going to happen there, right? Because they only have a few avenues to improve this team, and maybe those trades they're trading some of Cal's coveted young guys to bring in somebody. Who knows? Could be anything.
Possible, but you just can't get as much salary back that way.
Right.
So that's the tricky thing there. It certainly feels that way, like they're going to have to make a move with one of those 4 guys. But it's also difficult to say because we don't know who the general manager will be making those decisions. So,
unbelievable.
It's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really fascinating.
So,
I know they like Tommy, but who's to say? They've said they're going to conduct a full search after the season ends.
So the Luka Doncic trade stands by itself as the most shocking thing to happen in the NBA this season. But this is number 2, right?
Yeah, probably. Just a team that from the outside kind of seemed like one of the more reliable presences in the league. And you just kind of got used to seeing Michael Malone and understanding that he was part of this era and part of this team's success. It probably does win that prize. The argument against it would be that coaches getting fired just never seems surprising anymore in the NBA.
It does with 3 games left in regular season.
That's fair. Yes. And these circumstances are crazy. I've been trying to wrap my head around it, even as I've made phone calls and heard from various people around the team throughout the day. It is, I still kind of don't believe it a little bit.
So who on the roster now has to be looking over their shoulder?
I think it's Murray, Porter, and Gordon. I think that obviously Jokic isn't going anywhere unless stuff gets really crazy and he starts asking out or whatever. I just would be absolutely shocked if that ever happened.
He doesn't seem like that kind of person to me.
He's not that kind of person, and to be clear, he did not go to ownership requesting that these changes be made. I think that ownership kind of evaluated, sort of the vibe check with him and tried to get a feel for where he was at. He was certainly notified in advance, but this was not Jokic making a pressure play on the organization. So in the same way that he's not likely to do that, he's even less likely to ever actually ask out. And he's in a small market kind of peaceful, quiet situation that he likes. So,
yeah, I think he prefers the small market. I think he's one of the rare players that embraces the small market.
Yes. After him, my sense is that Christian Braun is the second most untouchable player this offseason.
Why do you say that?
The Kroenkes really like him. Ownership is extremely high on him and has been for all 3 years. And his contract is still what it is. It's going to be in the $4 million range, his salary next year. So
right, but they're going to have to extend him soon, and he's going to get paid. Not too far off in the future.
I would expect them to pay him. I think he's probably going to get extended this summer. I think that is way more likely than them trading him. Not impossible, but that's the feeling I get. I think it's those 3 other guys, the second through fourth options on the.
What about Peyton Watson?
I think that's more plausible to see a trade happening with him. But, we'll see. If he wouldn't be the centerpiece of a trade, just because what are you going to get that's guaranteed to be better than him at that price range? But if they're in a spot where they feel like they have to attach him to get a deal done to someone else, then I can see that happening.
Unbelievable.
But who knows? All bets are off. Like we don't know who the GM's going to be. So I guess anything is really possible here.
Yeah, outside of trading Nikola Jokic, that is not possible. That's the only one that there's just no way in heck that's ever going to happen.
Exactly. All right, I got to run now, but
unbelievable. What a day, Bennett. What a day. Glad you could join us for this very abbreviated emergency podcast. Have fun out there in Sacramento. I'm sure it'll be a blast.
Should be fun. Thanks, guys.
Wait, we're not boarding.
Wait, what's going on out there?
I don't know.
You're not boarding now?
I thought that they were. Well, maybe they. I don't know. I just saw people rushing over to the gate like they were about to close it up.
Did we just close early? Did we just close up shop early?
Bennett got caught in the middle of a lie, immediately.
Just as he said goodbye, I hear somebody saying we're not boarding right now.
No, I know. I'm kind of confused by it because I just saw someone sprint down there. But
okay, well, we got more time to talk, I guess. What else out of this do you think is something that now is possible because of what's gone on?
Are we still recording?
Oh yeah, we're still recording, buddy.
Oh, that's great.
This is the podcasters are going to love this. They're going to absolutely love this.
No, this is authentic content for sure. So let me just shed some light on this. I heard over the intercom while in the middle of speaking to you guys, and now there is more intercom speaking going on behind me, last call. And my flight information originally said last call was going to be at 10:25. And so I was like, oh, it must be happening. And I watched someone run down the little tunnel or whatever at the gate. And so I was like, oh, I guess I better board real fast. And then I go up there and they're like, we're not boarding yet. So I guess it was a different flight. It was boarding, and now everyone has just lined up for my flight. So
all right,
stuff from me. Yeah.
At least you're going to get on the flight. That's the important thing. You're going to make it to Sacramento. So all right, back to the Nuggets. We've gone over the entire Bennett Durando travel itinerary.
Yeah.
What else is going to happen with this? Is there a chance? Let's say that another player asks out because Michael Malone is no longer there, or is there any sort of popularity within the locker room with some of the players, like say Jamal Murray, that they wouldn't want to be a part of this going forward?
I've always gotten the sense that Jamal Murray has had the tightest bond with Michael Malone of anyone in that locker room. They have really stuck up for each other. We can all remember pretty well, I think, the worst month of Murray's career earlier this season and how adamantly Malone kind of defended him through that and ended up being right. Malone got proven right. Murray has had an outstanding season. And now we're just kind of caught in this limbo of his hamstring injury. But I don't know if that's enough to get Murray to ask out, because at the end of the day, he still got paid 4 years, $209 million by this organization. He still got the max that was available to him. He got that vote of confidence at a moment where they kind of had an out. They kind of had a fair reason to not show that confidence. He had just had a pretty bad postseason for the first time in his career, and then an even worse Olympics. So I don't know. Anything is possible. But I would be pretty startled if this led to the Nuggets and Jamal Murray parting ways because Murray wanted it that way. I think if a Murray trade ends up happening, it will be out of necessity and because they feel like they need to make that change to get value back, to get depth, to get the kind of stuff that they need to improve the roster.
All right. So I've got some potential coaches out there. You can tell me yay or nay, because we put together a little coaches list here of potential replacements for the departed Michael Malone. I can't believe I'm saying that. The departed Michael Malone. Frank Vogel.
Okay.
Yay, nay?
I guess I would lean nay.
NBA champion.
It's not NBA champion, no doubt, but he already just kind of crashed and burned at another spot, albeit a situation where he might have been a little bit more set up to fail. I don't know. I just don't know that that would be the most inspired hire necessarily. But it might feel like a safe one, so can't rule that out.
Mike Budenholzer. Not fired yet. Still got a job, but the Suns just got crushed again.
We're just cycling through the Suns. Do we have Monty on the list? Is he next?
No, Monty. I think it's pretty clear he doesn't want to coach anymore. Jordi Fernandez. Any way they could get him from Brooklyn? Gosh,
I think it would be worth trying. He's kind of been too good of a coach for Brooklyn's own good this year.
Right.
So, I'm like, he's got his feet in the ground there now, and he's kind of established a culture. So it might be the kind of thing where a coach establishes that and wants to see it through. But on the other hand, like, I kind of think both of these jobs are really good jobs at the end of the day. Like, coaching an offense and coaching around Nikola Jokic or building a roster around him are,
fun.
Those are delectable opportunities. I wouldn't rule it out if they wanted to take a swing at him. There's a ton of organizational respect for Jordy. I can tell you that.
Do you think coaches would definitely see this as attractive, right? Even in light of what happened to Michael Malone, that's not going to deter other coaches from being interested in this job, right?
It could a little bit, but I think the NBA coaches are pretty aware of how insane their field of work is, no matter what team they're getting hired by. So, like Budenholzer took that job with Phoenix after they had just fired 2 coaches in a row.
Yeah.
And
look what's going to happen to him now.
Exactly. He's about to get fired. He was freshly removed from being in the Malone situation where he got fired 2 years after winning the title in Milwaukee. So I don't know that it really makes that big of a difference like what they did with Malone at the end of the day. I think opportunity is opportunity.
Speaking of fired coaches, Taylor Jenkins.
Yeah, has to be thrown out there, I think, as an option.
Seems like he's a good coach.
It seems like it. Is that a demonstrable upgrade over Malone. I don't know that he is.
Well, I mean, if that's the bar you're setting, I don't know if there's any coach that's available right now that's a demonstrable upgrade over Michael Malone.
That's fair. I think the best argument that you can make for someone who is would be a young up-and-coming coach who's kind of showed off some technical chops and had the ability to do something with a team that we didn't expect to be good, like a Jordi Fernandez. You could make an argument from like where he's at in his career and just that sort of element of it that he is an upgrade just in terms of the style that you're getting.
How about Josh Kroenke's old college coach, Quinn Snyder?
I heard today that would be pretty unlikely. But, worth throwing him out there as another Mizzou guy.
Sam Cassell. You like Sam Cassell? He's been a pretty good assistant for a while.
Yeah, why not? I feel like there's been a ton of buzz around him, and he's going to interview for every opening pretty much. So, that's an intriguing idea to me.
Last one, Becky.
I'm running out of time now, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, Becky Hammon.
It would be obviously a historically significant hire.
Colorado ties.
I mean, who knows how it would go? Look, I mean, she's got a ton of respect for her, obviously, but it's kind of hard to see them deciding we're going to be in the middle of all this organizational strife. We're going to make this historic landmark hire and then bring in even more sort of media attention around this situation and around Jokic and all that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I've got another one for you.
Throw it at me.
Hadn't thought about it. Mike Nori.
Oh, good old Mike. Yeah, well, he did coach Jokic as an assistant early in his career, and I believe they kind of got along. At least that was. I
believe they very much got along. Yes,
that's what I got from the Jokic book that I read from Mike Singer.
Yep. They definitely had a great relationship. Obviously, an interesting dynamic there, in that Nori used to carpool to Nuggets games with Michael Malone. So
and then another Timberwolves connection too.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is incestuous between the Nuggets and Timberwolves, so got to keep that up.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over this next week or two, how the Nuggets respond, where they go from here. I got to tell you, I think a championship is out the window at this point. I would put my house on them not winning a championship this season. Just doesn't seem like this is the recipe for that to happen. But it's going to be interesting. Bennett?
We'll see. Yeah, it's going to be an entertaining last 2 weeks to 2 months, I guess. So we'll see how it goes.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you put in that 2 months. You're still throwing it out there. It could happen. NBA Finals.
Just in case. I don't. There's a reason I'm not planning any trips through the end of June. So.
Well, I mean, they're going to be looking for a new coach then too. So I mean, it's good. There's going to be plenty of Nuggets news between now and the end of June, no matter what. Between the coaching search, the executive search, whatever crazy transactions they decide to do. What a time! What a time for Nuggets fans. Sad day, I think, overall. It is. I mean, listen. These are all humans. They just lost their jobs. That's got to be an awful feeling, especially if you're, these guys who have invested so much time into this. Michael Malone, 10 years of his life. Booth has been here since, I believe, 2017. So
yeah.
You're talking about
you're talking about two guys who, have their families here and who really cared about trying to get this done, and obviously had their differences in how they wanted to get the job done. But look, they don't disagree as much unless they care as much as they did. So I'll say that for both of them. And I think that ultimately, no one disagrees. Michael Malone is a good coach. And I think Calvin Booth, is a pretty smart thinker of basketball and an amazing talent evaluator based on what he was able to do here, he'll have a more complex legacy, I think, than Malone. But, that'll be a conversation for another day, I guess.
Yeah, Michael Malone's legacy, I think, is pretty rock solid, right? Best coach in Nuggets history.
I think so.
And
Yeah, I would say so.
There's really, it's going to take somebody else to do a heck of a lot of stuff to supplant him in that respect.
Yes, I would agree. It would take another long tenure that would require an unprecedented sort of patience like what they showed Malone. So
right,
we'll have to see.
Yeah, and probably multiple championships, I would think.
I would think so too. All right, I actually have to board this time, but thanks for your commitment late at night, guys.
And thanks for joining us, Bennett. We'll talk soon.
Looks like we have another dragon, Master Ace, spitting the burning passion. It's about to be a catastrophe. Thought I was the only survivor, but at last we meet. Like the food vegans don't eat. I know you can see the infernal blaze. We would probably burn the stage and leave it with third degrees. And inside of us is an eternal blaze, blazing eternally like a furnace. But it's so hot it's burning the furnace's frame. Your family and furniture isn't safe. Better evacuate, cause the skill we can calibrate reduces the chances of your survival if you ever try to retaliate. So dance to this recital so you can slowly gravitate towards us. Who needs a chorus when you're hotter than Earth's core is? No strings attached with no puppets, yo, we're cordless. I fly even when I'm hurt, yo, that's soaring. Your skill isn't apparent, it's an orphan. We proceed to spit the verse that takes your spirit and lifts it high into the earth's atmospheres. Don't come at my sphere of influence, you squares. I take a spear and put it through you, I raise the stakes. Ha, medium rare, you're the least of the media's fears. Why he's the reason the media's scared. Please be prepared to be impaired. Go see repairs, defeating people in pairs. Jordans, I thought I needed pairs to be compared to the people in pairs.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
Gather round hip-hoppers as if you're still living. Still got love for the game, I'm still giving and still driven. Like Diddy in the Maybach. I've been repping for the city since way back. All y'all rappers better stay back, cause you still can't find me, I'm a needle in a haystack. A rare breed sitting high up in the chariot. What y'all do is getting high up in the Marriott. Well, consider this your wake-up call. If you're married to the game, it's the breakup call. And you ain't wearing a crown if you're not tearing it down. You clowns get found right there in the ground. 6 feet, dirt nap, that's because your shit's weak. I'm a giant, you a pipsqueak. Welcome to my kingdom, yup, the throne has an occupant. Read my name at the bottom of the document. Check the scroll, giving good times like Esther Roll. Peace to Keith E, God bless the soul. Trying to get more checks to hold. On some slick Rick, Mr. T shit, big chest of gold. And the flow still extra cold, like the North Pole, cocaine snow, another lost soul. Bow down, it's the Grand Royal, yup. 20 plus years in the game, and still the fans loyal.